I don't want to get involved either, but I've been saying for 20 years, maybe longer, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And they'd use it. You know, I believe they'd use it.
Bombs continue to drop over Israel, and the president issues an ultimatum. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Jackie DeAngelis. Joining me, my co-host, Taylor Riggs. Lou Bassanese is in for Dagan McDowell, Brian Bremberg, and with us for the entire hour, Slatestone Wealth Chief Market Strategist, Kenny Polcari. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me.
According to new reporting, Trump has privately approved U.S. attack plans targeting Iran, but so far has held back on giving the final order. The pressure is building fast. Trump briefing with his national security team as we speak. Meanwhile, the U.S. just moved its newest supercarrier, the USS Gerald Ford, into the Mediterranean with a massive military buildup underway. Overnight, an Israeli hospital hit directly in a major Iranian missile attack, and the Israelis are now threatening to eliminate the Ayatollah. And according to a new Fox poll, voters do see Iran as a real threat, but remain split on Israel's strikes. Kenny, I want to talk to you because we've been watching the market take this pretty much in stride so far. Today, you're seeing a more substantial move to the downside on the Dow, 400 points. This is as President Trump has said he's weighing all his options, but it seems he's tilting the scale a little with respect to how he's weighing them. He has also said that he will wait till the last second. It's a fluid situation. It is developing quickly. He doesn't need to make a decision now, but it seems like smart money is saying something could happen here.
Listen, I think at some point something has to happen because you can't be half pregnant, right? They've already started this problem. They've already started this issue. You can't leave it. They have to finish it, whether it's the Israelis, whether it's anybody else. I think most of the world is in agreement that Iran should not have or could not have access to a nuclear bomb. And now that they've come this far, we've been talking about this for how long? I've been talking about for 50 years. It was 1979 when they got taken over. I was 19 years old, right? So for 50 years, we've been talking about this regime in Iran, and it cannot happen. So I know he's in a tough place, right? So Trump is in a tough spot right now, but I think something has to happen.
I have said I don't envy him. He's weighing these decisions very carefully, understanding the implications and the impact that it could have not only on the region in the Middle East, but globally as well. There could be repercussions. Meantime, overnight, the Israeli hospital that was directly hit from a major missile attack from Iran is in the news today. This is as the Iranians are basically showing that, you know, they give very little consideration to the targets that they're hitting. They're hitting civilian targets. They're hitting hospitals. This is below the belt, even in the means of war, Brian. And so, to me, it's an escalation. Iran, obviously, being very defiant here.
Yeah, they are. This happens a lot, I think, when people get backed into a corner, or a nation gets backed into a corner, or a maniacal dictator gets backed into a corner and knows that he has a losing hand. I hate to see this. These images are terrible. It doesn't surprise me with the Iranian regime. When have they ever shown an interest in human rights with their own people or anyone else's? Never. So this is what they do. What I like is President Trump continues to be so calculated and measured here. He is not being moved by anyone. Right. He's not. I don't think he's being moved by Netanyahu. He's not being moved by the Ayatollah. He's not being moved by his advisors. He's listening to them. He's putting option after option on the table and letting Iran see very clearly, we've got these assets. You don't want to know what they could do to you. But he's not being moved by anybody. And his focus, I think, has remained so crystal clear. And the right is even divided on this, which is interesting to me. But his focus has been so crystal clear. He is talking about the presenting threat of nuclear weaponry, and that's it. And that's what I want to see out of my leader, a strong hand and a very clear focus, and that's what we're getting out of the president right now.
Lou, Ted Cruz says that the bunker strike is possible in Iran, but he says no boots on the ground, and there is not any appetite here in America for our troops to be on the ground. But you think of what the implications of the bunker buster situation could potentially be. Yes, you finish the job. Yes, you go underground and take out the nucleus of what they've been trying to develop. But at the same time, they're not going to take it lying down. If they retaliate in some way on U.S. assets, whether it's in the region or I keep talking about the sleeper cells because I'm worried about that around the globe, then all of a sudden you might have a situation where the U.S. has no option but to respond accordingly. And I'll just add to this, the Israeli defense minister is saying the Ayatollah cannot continue to exist. Trump supposedly had said, don't take out the supreme leader because of the escalation that could cause. But if Israel goes ahead and does something like that, now we're talking about,
Yeah, I mean, I think you're very well summing up the delicate nature of this situation. Ted Cruz, it's a great aspiration not to escalate this to boots on the ground. I just don't know that that's a reality of war, right? I think, and here we're dealing with, as Brian pointed out, a leader that in a time of crisis, a great leader communicates. President Trump is doing that. He's doing it very meticulously, methodically. He's staying in front of the options to make sure front and center we know what could happen. That's one side of it. Then the market event, right? Markets traditionally respond pretty well to any type of geopolitical events. I mean, if you go back 40 plus years, 40 rough odd events, the drawdown usually lasts an average of 17 days and you recover within 16. So again, I don't want to mix investing with war, but it's just the reality we're talking about. This is the markets. It sends a signal. I think if you're looking at investments, this is not the time to panic. It's more of a time to mind the course, stay invested. But then this is a delicate situation. I think the biggest variable is oil right now. How this escalates impacts oil more than anything, and that will become what the Fed focuses on overall.
Which is why President Trump wanted his drill baby drill policy instituted. Joe Biden and his cronies walk that back over the course of the last 4 years. So we find ourselves, Taylor, in a different situation. You're still looking at a market, despite the conflict that we're watching, that isn't, completely falling out of bed the way Lou points out. And so a question for investors is, how do I position myself from here forward?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot in the last few days about how the markets felt relatively resilient. We're back below, of course, markets are closed today, but yesterday the S&P 500 closed below 6,000. So we're back to where we were Friday when all of this really started escalating, but you're still 200-300 points higher than you were on Liberation Day for tariffs. And that actually then kind of leads me, Jackie, into then sort of what is important for Americans here at home, because I think the president might also be considering, he campaigned on a promise of mark my success on how many wars we don't start, on how many forever wars we don't get into. And I think that is the issue right here, where in the specter of Iraq that we've talked about, how much of the last 25 years is hanging over all of our heads about boots in the ground, forever wars. Can you do a bunker buster? Is that one and done? What are the unintended consequences that you can't yet foresee from that? But the polling right now, Jackie, as you mentioned in your intro, is on his side. 73% of registered voters think Iran poses a real threat to the U.S. That's up 13 points, I should say, from 2019. 69% of Democrats agree with that. 82% of Republicans, but their voted is more split in terms of the reaction to it. So they were saying, do you want to launch missile strikes against Iran's nuclear programs? That's only half now are starting to approve that. And that's where things get dicey of like, well, then what do you do about Iran knowing that it is a fear, but then what is the action on that? The New York Times editorial had a really interesting piece today saying that you can do a bunker buster and then immediately follow up with a diplomatic solution, which is we will now relieve all of your economic sanctions because we've taken out your bunker buster, and then let's see if you can flourish.
Let me just make a point.
I think the calculation of what they're going to do.
There's an interesting emergence here with China, because you had over the weekend Tim Walz saying that the U.S. isn't a neutral peace broker, but that China would be the one to, administer peace somehow in this situation. And then you've got one of their ministers coming out today, China, saying that Israel should stop its strikes. So you clearly see where they stand. And I think it's important to note here who is on whose side. You've got Iran backed up by China with alliances also with Russia. We're talking about communist regimes here essentially getting together. And I'm a little bit concerned about when this escalates, because it seems like it probably will, how those other players get involved in this.
Well, I think to your point, I mean, I got to amend what I said. Oil is the most important variable here. If this escalates and China sides with Iran, with Russia, it emboldens them to go take over Taiwan, which is a complete game changer for the global economy, right? So I think don't mistake ourselves. They are watching very carefully how the president responds. And is he going to respond in strength like he has done? Is he going to do it in a way that leads to a diplomatic reconciliation? But here's the thing. you can offer diplomatic reconciliation immediately, drastic. But
he's
they
been
might not
offering
want
it all along.
Exactly.
They've been offering it all along. To your point, if you blow up the nuclear site, just get it done. Now it's over. Now that part is gone. And this, to your point, now we're going to come in and let's talk about diplomacy and let's talk about bringing you back online and getting rid of the sanctions and helping you flourish again, but not under those conditions.
Well, it's not quite over if you drop the bunker buster.
Well, it's over in the sense that you've now destroyed their nuclear capability.
It's over in the sense that there's rubble with enriched uranium laying under the rubble, and that's boots on the ground time. Now, I don't think that should be U.S. boots on the ground. I don't think the president said anything about that. But if you talk to people who know about this stuff, and we talked about this yesterday, somebody's boots
have to go
outside of Iran are going to be on the ground, and that is going to be that elongates the time to whatever deal you think you're going to get.
To complicate matters even further, we're talking about the notion of a regime change there as well, to take this, complete radical Islamist regime out altogether. That doesn't seem to be something the United States wants to get involved in. We haven't had a lot of success with that when we try to do it. But you've got the former Crown Prince of Iran on his social media calling for the people to rise up, saying Western powers are behind you. They will back you. Don't be scared. It is a very scary proposition to hit the streets and protest in that way, especially with such a militant regime. But they're just, I bring that up because there are so many variables here with respect of how this can go.
Right.
And Trump really has to look at the chessboard very carefully as he makes these decisions. I think he is doing that.